Yeah, dude. But first, let's talk about jazz basses.
Okay.
We're here to talk about jazz, but before we even go there, show me that bass, show me the neck.
Yeah.
I've just been geeking out it silently, looking at it like a...
Have you? You've been checking it out across the pond?
Yeah, like somebody like hiding in the bushes.
This is an Olinto, and it's, their jazz bass that they make. They did this sort of like gold Antigua finish. The neck is crazy. It's all roasted. The whole thing, I believe it's roasted ash and then roasted maple cap, bird's eye maple neck.
The neck looks great.
Flamed. Yeah, the neck's crazy.
What about the fingerboard? Is the fingerboard
is bird's eye. Yep. Had to just check. Yeah. Is it? Yes.
And is it going to dethrone? Is it going to dethrone the jazz bass? The
Antigua, the poor Antigua. Right back here. The crazy thing about this is that on paper, it is better in every way. Yeah. Like, it's lighter, it's better built. Like, the pickups are better, the construction is better, everything about it, the balance, everything. And still, this bass, I think it's fair because that's the bass that I just have put the time in on. Yeah. So I need to learn this one. I mean, it sounds awesome. It sounds great, doesn't it? Yeah. Like, it sounds better too. Like, I plug in and play the other one, but there's a familiarity, right? Yeah. So like someone not knowing those two instruments and coming in and like, from zero baggage or experience with either one, you'd pick this, I think.
Oh, interesting.
Like, I think it sounds better. It's lighter. Like I say, it's a better instrument on every level. But for me, this is just like, that's the old, that's the old ball and chain. That's the, like I have a relationship with that instrument. Yeah. So I don't know if it will ever be like dethroned. Whenever I play it, it's like, oh, it's so comfortable. And I've just gotten used to the way it sucks. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it sounds great.
Like, I've gotten used to it.
It does sound great. I will say that Olinto sounds incredible, though. Especially
it really
through
does.
my ginormous headphones today. Look, who am I? Rogan? Can I just tell you?
Look at you.
Yeah, check it out, right? So I've been bitching and moaning to Alan. Poor Alan that normally sits over there, but Gav's there today. Shout out, Gav. So Gav's there today, but Alan's normally sat in that chair over there, dealing with all of this video and audio, the shenanigans, right, that freak me out. Right. And over the last few weeks, I've been moaning and bitching. Alan, the sound's not right. My headphones, like moan, like, and the kind of sort of like subliminally saying, "Your fault. Please sort it out, Alan. It's something to do with all of these wires on the floor, something to do with the sound card. Alan, sort it out, bitch man. Anyway, so yesterday, it all came to a head, and we were like, what? We were doing this live stream for SBL. We were like trying to fix it. You know what? I've been not Alan. I've been blaming all of these wires and the sound card for like the last 3 to 5 weeks. It was my headphones.
Yeah, it was.
It was my fault. So that is why I'm here with these humongous headphones on.
They look great.
Yeah, well, dude, they look great. Honestly, it's incredible. It sounds amazing. Yeah. To go from sort of like headphones that are working, just to like put these things, it's like,
your world just opens up. Yeah.
Now I just need some glasses so I can see properly instead of just looking at you. And I was just saying to Ian before, guys, I forgot my glasses. So I'm great, like in terms of like, I'm not great at long vision, but it's okay, it's passable. But like short vision like this, I'm looking at the screen. Ian just looks like a fleshy lump. Like, well, I can see the
some would say, Scott. That's all I am.
A fleshy lump.
Dude, tell me about that bass though, because that bass, I even played that on a video or two the last time I was over, but I don't remember what year it is and what the story is.
I don't either.
That's awesome.
It's like a 70s.
You don't know?
No, I know it's a 70s one because it's got I've had a bunch of basses like this. I've got another one at home, like a random 70s jazz basses. Oh, first world problem. Just finding random 70s jazz basses.
What is this, dude? It's the smallest fiddle in the world playing. Exactly. I don't have enough 70s jazz basses.
I actually prefer the other one. That's a song. It's nice. But
Does it have the thumb rest screws at the top, like by the E string?
No thumb rest. It's got a freaking glossy neck. It's like this.
I know it doesn't have a thumb rest, but does it have the screw holes for the thumb rest? I see that it does.
Yeah, it has the screw
so
holes,
that means it's post 74. So it's between 74 and 78 probably.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, and it's got one of these necks that's been dipped in varnish, like just like those.
Do you like that, or do you not like
that? I do.
Really? See, I love it. I love the thick, glassy poly finishes.
I feel like your hands like sticking to it. It's like
I think that, well, on mine anyway, I think that like, I don't know, the longer you play it, or mine got like really slippery feeling. It's not sticky. Like to me, nitro feels really sticky on necks. But poly, when you play it a bunch, it feels like it gets sort of like, but is that one super sticky? You just need to play
really
it more.
Sticky, and I haven't got my glove today, which is shame on me. But I haven't got it anyway. But it will be super slippy if I have my glove. But yeah,
I suppose right.
I just don't like the look of the feel of it. I don't like it. I don't like.
You hate this bass. You're telling me you hate this bass.
I hate this bass, but I do like my other one way better. And it's got. I think that at some point somebody's taken the gloss off the neck, so it's got this really super slinky neck, and it's great. But again, like with all of these 70s basses, they do come with quirks, and that bass, that bass it just needs a setup, because anything above the 10th fret, you can't really. It just sort of like frets out. I was like doing a gig on it recently, and it like sounded great down here, then great down there, but as soon as you anything up there is, well, you can't even hear it right when it frets out. When I don't know.
The notes go away.
Have you ever had that experience where you're playing it at home and you're like, oh, it's okay. I could do a gig on this, and you take it to a gig and all of the notes that fret out, you just can't hear them at all. They just disappear.
Yes.
Yeah. It's horrendous.
Yep. Because you're maybe playing it a little harder on the gig or something, right? And you go up and, and then the problem is you dig in harder, the note goes away more.
Exactly that.
You know what I mean?
Digging in, and the more you're getting really frustrated, then you're digging in even more, and you're like, kids, please give me a note. Just let me hear the note. And it's just like, nothing.
Terrible.
Kills me. Anyway.
Yeah.
We're here to talk about why jazz sucks, dude.
We are here to talk about why jazz sucks.
Yeah. Not only why it sucks, but we thought it would be great to kick it off with why it sucks, because it does. And there's a bunch of reasons why. And we know because we've been through the fire.
We sure have.
Yeah.
I mean, you're rubbing your eyes and I'm looking up at the ceiling.
Yeah,
I mean, I feel like, yes, I feel like there's baggage, right? There's baggage associated. If you endeavor to have a life with yas, there is baggage.
Yeah, there is.
Oh, are you familiar, dude, with yas?
I'm familiar with a bit of yas. I think it's interesting because, well, for a bunch of different reasons, but I think that just to get into it straight away, I think that for me, I was always told that, the real players play jazz. Like the real players play jazz. Even before I played bass, my first memory of anybody saying this was my dad. I'd started playing guitar. I was around 13 years old. I was playing a little bit of electric. I was going for some like classical guitar lessons down in town as well. Things were going swimmingly, but I had my dad. He always said this thing. You know what? I don't even know where he got it from. I don't think I literally no idea. But my dad always said, the real musicians, the greatest musicians, they play jazz. So it kind of like was always this thing in the back of my mind was like, like the real musos, they play jazz. And I have heard people also say it. They've said, like the baddest guys, they all play jazz. And two things. Yes, if you look at the greatest players, the legends, the James Jamerson, the Carol Kays, the Pino Palladinos, the Anthony Jacksons, right through to like Joe Dart, like more modern players, right? Actually, yes, they all have studied jazz. So, but what people don't say is, like the best players play jazz. Subtitle or subtext, it's freaking painful and hard.
Right.
So they tell you to go do it, or like give you this message that you should be going and doing it. But what they don't do is follow it up and say, oh, by the way, it's also, or can be, like staring into the abyss and chewing on ground glass, where you're going to be drinking a large mug of self-hatred every day if you decide to take this on. And there are specific reasons why. But that is the reality. And I felt that, and I know that you felt that. And you haven't shared your experience with me. I haven't, I've got an experience that I can share with you.
I can't wait. Do you think though that like the we've talked about the self-loathing, the mug of self-hatred.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think that starts with these crazy expectations that people, starting with your dad saying the baddest cats. I mean, it even has its own vernacular, the baddest cats play jazz. Like, okay, and now I think that stuff is sort of silly, but then I was like, oh, wow. That's got to be true. It starts there, right? And the ivory tower is created by just these talking points of like, and that it's really hard. I sometimes think that because we say, oh, the best people do it and it's really hard, and it's like, oh, okay, it sets you up for just this sort of like miserable start.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it has to.
Me too. Well, like my pathway into it was rough, and I think that
mine too.
Like mine was. I think that mine came to an apex, and I've told the story on the podcast before.
We want it.
You want the story?
We want the story.
Okay, I'll give you, for anybody that's listened to it, I'll give you the sort of like the bullets. The highlights of the story is
I want the nitty gritty bullets though, dude. I want the mean stuff. I want that nasty.
Okay. So, well, I was venturing into the world of professional bassdom, right? Playing, I'd played in a theatre show for, I think it was around a year or so. That was like a full-time gig, but check it out, right? I was painting by numbers. Yes, I was like, it was a bass gig. I had the bass chair. But I wasn't a bass player. I was just playing what was written on the sheet. I wasn't creating my own bass lines. I wasn't outlining chords. I didn't even know my freaking function in the band was, other than to play the notes on the sheet. That's all I was doing.
Yes.
So I was like, some would have called me a professional bass player, but looking back, I was not. I was, earning a living from it, but I certainly wasn't a bass player. I was a guitar player that was playing bass and just playing the notes written on the sheet. Okay. So it's a big difference between that and a true functional bass player. And I think that this is like a side conversation to go down at another time. But I think that understanding exactly what a bass player's function is within a band is really important. Otherwise,
it's so
you kind of like set up for failure from the beginning, right? And that's what happened to me. I didn't understand what I was supposed to be doing as a bass player. Anyway, that theatre gig ended, and then the guy that gave me that gig actually called me, and he was like, "Hey, do you want to go on a cruise ship gig?" And I was like, "What do you mean a cruise ship gig?" He's like, "Oh, there's this gig. You can go and cruise around the world to like tropical places, faraway lands, and you can get paid for it." My mind literally blew up. I was like, what? This is incredible.
Yes.
I was like, yes, sign me up. This is amazing. I want to go. So, headline, there was no way I was ready to do this because, to my earlier point, I wasn't a freaking bass player. I was a guitar player who had played bass for a year, just playing the notes on the music, right, on the sheet. I hadn't I wasn't fully transitioned into bass at all, or being a bass player. So I went to this audition, and it was like stepping into the Dragon's Den or the Shark Tank, except the sharks were actually great white sharks. And the person pitching the business was me with my bass, right? So I went to this audition, and this musical director who was there to audition me, he walked over and he said, "Okay, so what standards do you know?" What? what standards do you know? He said. I was like, what's a standard? A jazz standard. So let me just back up a little bit. This guy was legendary for being really super horrible to musicians. Like he was like.
Did you know that?
I did not know that. I just sort of like.
So you.
I walked in, 21, smiling, long hair. I was just like, just like feeling good. I'm like, yeah. Anyway,
hadn't this guy done like a crazy thing before? Like, hadn't he?
I found out.
Wasn't there stories of?
Yeah, there's stories of him throwing a bass player's bass into the street, opening the back door of a venue and throwing a bass player's bass into the road and just kicking the guy off the gig, and then he just completed the rest of the gig where the MD was playing left hand bass. Oh, yeah.
Left hand.
Yeah, dude. He was like old school. If anybody's watched. What's that movie?
Whiplash.
And anybody was like, "Oh, that's BS stuff for Hollywood." I'm here to tell you, unfortunately, not. Anyway, so
right.
Yeah, so he was like play a what standards do you know? I didn't even know what a standard was. Now he meant jazz standard, but I didn't know that, and I certainly didn't know any jazz tunes either. So he was like. So he like rummaging around in his case, and he put onto the music stand a lead sheet just with chords and stuff like that. So he put it down there, and he was just like, "Hey, let's play this." Well, I had no idea what the chord symbols were, how to. I knew it was like a B flat because I played guitar, right, and B flat and E flat, C, but I didn't know how to outline them on a bass. And he was like, "It's just a walking bass line type of thing." Well, I didn't know how to play walking bass lines. What he wanted me to do was something like, like the thing, right?
Of course, yeah.
He wanted me to do that.
Yes.
And I knew he wanted me to do that, but I didn't know what to do. You know what I did?
What'd you do?
I played the first note on the page. So embarrassing to say.
Dude, show me what you did.
First note on the page was like an F or something like this. I did this.
Yeah. Like chromatically.
Just wandering around the bass, playing random notes. I didn't know what to do.
I bet your feel didn't feel as good as it just did there, though, also.
I'll tell you what as well. I haven't told this bit of the story either, ever before. Yeah. So if anybody's like, I heard this story before, let me tell you. I can remember like this was yesterday, the amount of sweat pouring down my face at this moment. It was, I can remember looking down and it was dripping off my nose. There was sweat dripping off my nose. So the guy gets angrier and angry, stops the band in the middle. The band is they can feel the tension in the room. Like you could feel spikes lying on a bed of nails. There was so much tension in the room. So they're actually not even looking at each other. They're just staring at the page, staring at the lead sheet or looking at the floor. Like they're terrified of this guy. And I'm just sweating. And he's like, well, and he's like huffing and puffing, and he's sort of like obviously like super pissed off, right?
Yeah.
And at this point, he's like, "Do you know what a bossa nova is?" And he's like, ultimately, it ends in him just sort of like completely losing his rag, and he basically kicks me out of the.
What did he say? Do you remember
like a village hall type of thing? The audition was going down. I don't know, but I can. It was just like there's no point even going on. There's just no point. Get out. And then I had to pack my bass up and my amp, and all of the other musicians are just sat there in silence. They're just sat there. Nobody's saying a word. Nobody's moving. They're just sat there. Some are like staring at the floor. Some of them just staring at their lead sheet. It's bizarre. Anyway, so I walked out of that place and I got in my car and I drove home. I think I might have cried on the way home. And I got home, and as I walked through the front door, the phone is ringing. I lift up the phone and it's the guy. I'm not going to mention his name. It's the guy. And he's like, "Listen, you're going on this cruise ship. And the reason you're going on this cruise ship is because if you don't go, all of the guys in the band, they can't go. And they need to go because they've cancelled gigs to go on this. And you are the only bass player that can go away for 6 months' time and go in
No
like 2
pressure.
weeks or whatever. It was like, no, there was only 2 weeks. So you can't find a bass player to like disappear from home and like family and stuff like that with 2 weeks notice. So I was the only person that they could take. And he said, but be under no illusion that you will not be staying on this ship. You will be getting sent home and I will be sending out a replacement. Anyway, long story short, long story long, I got on the ship and I learned what I needed to learn. Shout out to the guitar player and the keys player, Tim. They helped me to learn what I needed to learn. And I stayed on that ship. And that was I learned to play bass. I became a bass player on that ship.
Wow.
And
yeah.
Playing every night. We were playing 5 nights a week. I learned how to play walking bass lines and bossa novas and all of the
you did.
All
of course
that
you
stuff,
did.
right? And
right.
Like about improvisation and chord sequences. I learned about that on the ship. That was the start for me. And that's when I really got to grips with what jazz was, why it was important, why I needed to learn it. Like it was wandering into that kind of like professional environment and not knowing how to play walking bass lines and understanding how to function as a bass player was just like suicide. It was like bass suicide.
Right.
But anyway,
right.
So that was, and I've had like, other sort of like painful stories. They all ended up great. I made, mistakes. I fell over, obviously, just like a kid when they're learning to walk falls over, but I made sure that I fell forward and I picked myself up and I brushed myself off and I kept on going.
Yeah.
And then ultimately, everything sort of like worked out. And there's lots of stories like this. There's lots of stories. Like I was recording another podcast today, actually on my own. I was talking about an incredible story that Paul Geary sent over after I shared a story. I think that we've talked about it before. Maybe even when I was talking about this story, and Paul Geary reached out, who's an incredible bass player from the UK, an incredible educator as well. And he was like, oh, check this out. And he told me his story about turning up to the studio the second day. It was his first session. And he turned up that second day. There was another bass player there.
Oh, yes.
Like just these incredible stories, and I think that everybody's got these really fantastic stories of pain and struggling, right? And ultimately, I think the headline is that more people should be talking about them. We have had conversations with incredible bass players, or notable bass players who are, super famous in bassdom, right? And they actually really struggle with sharing these stories. And I think it's a shame because they've freaking had them. Of course they have. They've had them. You've had them, right? And we're open about sharing them, but I think that people feel like this should be hidden. It needs to be my secret, shameful moment.
It's so vulnerable.
Yeah,
it's so vulnerable. It's like to share that stuff. It's not, especially if you're trying to sort of make a career for yourself and like you want to be seen as some kind of, monster super chops.
Yeah.
Insane player. I think it can be really hard to look back and actually be truthful and light, or sort of like lighthearted about those moments, or be actually heavy-hearted about them. That's probably even harder.
Yeah.
Actually, to be like, this was really painful, really difficult. Remember Tony Gray? Tony Gray shared with us. Incredible. I mean, and it was public. I'm not outing Tony on this, but he talked about going to Berkeley, and he is. Help me out with this. He's John McLaughlin. How do you say it?
Nephew.
McLaughlin. Yeah. The great John McLaughlin, jazz guitarist, his nephew. And so when he showed up to Berkeley, everyone thought that he was just going to be this ripping
and he did exactly
bebop
what
monster.
I did. So he was a non-functioning bass player. So what he'd done is he'd learned one melody. I think it was the melody of Donna Lee. He'd learned that, and he couldn't play anything else. So he learned it, and then he sent it in. The guys at the admissions at Berkeley were like, whoa. First of all, Tony Gray, John McLaughlin's nephew, tick. Secondly, he's like blazing through Donnelly. Whoa, amazing. But he actually couldn't play bass. So he got there and obviously, and went through what my experience that I just said, just like 5 minutes ago. He probably went through a similar experience of that, but within sort of like a school environment. Oh my God. Like I imagine that could be even worse because,
brutal.
You're basically injected into a sort of like, all of these like pubescent teens or post-teens or whatever, you're injected into there. And you know what? Yes. Teenagers sometimes aren't that nice to each other. And having that experience in that environment must have been incredibly hard. And I can remember Tony talking about it, and it was incredible. And hats off to Tony. He did exactly the same. He sort of like went through that experience. He dusted himself off, made sure when he fell forward, picked himself off, dusted himself, and then cracked on. And now he's just an incredible world-class bass player who thankfully feels really comfortable about sharing his stories of struggle. Because we've all had them. And ultimately, it's especially when you're, for me at least, like, let me just say it out into the universe. When you're learning jazz, and if you're listening to this and you're just thinking, jazz, what even, like, like I don't want to learn jazz. I've got nothing,
Right.
Get it out of my face. It's awful. It's actually incredibly valuable, and that is the reason why all of these monster musicians, legendary bass players, for the most part, all have spent time studying jazz. For the most part, most of them, all of the ones that I mentioned, Jameson, Carol Kay, Pino Palladino, Anthony Jackson, there's like reams and reams of these bass players, right? And like Anthony Jackson, of the ones that I mentioned, yes, he has had sort of like a big chunk of his career has been sort of like focused on jazz, but the other guys have, they don't play jazz, but they've spent time studying jazz because of all of these incredible benefits that you can get from it. So I think it's worth saying, but where I was going with this is, there's no hiding. I think that's the sort of like the writing on the wall that I didn't see when I was starting
that's
out.
right.
It's like, if you wander into a situation where you're going to be playing some jazz standards, I was going to say it's incredibly hard to hide. There actually isn't anywhere to hide. It's going to be very obvious immediately whether you can do it or not. It's sort of like it's a yes or no. It's like, can you play a walking bass line? It's not sort of like, well, kind of. It's like it's a yes or no. Are you comfortable within that environment? Do you know sort of like the common terminology? Do you understand about, the numbers system? It's a yes or no, right? It's like there's no bluff in it. So I think that's why it can be hard for bass players to really get into it, because there's this incredible, it seems like a big hurdle to get over, and also there's many different attributes to it. It's not like jazz bass isn't one thing. It's like walking bass lines, it's improvisation, it's understanding the number system and chordal harmony and theory. It's all of it's all of these different things, and as a student or as a bass player, it can be just so overwhelming to want to do this. And to our earlier point, like I think the title of this podcast is Why Jazz Sucks, or something along why
learning jazz sucks.
This is why it sucks. What we're not saying is you shouldn't do it. If you want to up-level your bass playing, this is probably the path. it's anyways.
And part of the reason it sucks also, like, yes, it's difficult, but sometimes the educators make it difficult. And so there's this thing of, there's this machismo sport aspect to it, right? Of like, hey, can you hang? You vibe people out in sessions or, on jams, or like the teenagers at Berkeley have all been sort of brought up. Yeah, I mean, this is a generalization, but that like, the baddest cats do it. It's difficult. So if I can do it, I'm the best. I'm number one. And that is so pervasive. Yeah. And I think it takes a really special teacher or program, hint, hint, breh, I mean, we're talking about here. But it really takes a special consideration, group of individuals and path to make it not seem like horrible and daunting and a sport. So that's what I did not have that. I had, similar to you, Scott, I had a situation where I was absolutely mocked and made fun of that I didn't know it. Show up to my first jazz band. I knew that I was going to do the jazz band in 8th grade. I'd played this instrument for a year, and I was so excited. And I even told my private teacher, hey, I'm going to be joining jazz band. And he said, oh, and he didn't know jazz. He was a guitar player and I knew we were going to play C Jam blues.
Oh, yeah.
And this guy who taught me was like, oh, blues. So, and he also was like, Ian, you have to play with a pick. My first
You
teacher.
do, right?
And so he literally taught me. Yeah, you do, right? He was like, you get a bright sound and you pick back by the bridge. And so I showed up to jazz band with, a different, this wasn't my teacher. This was a jazz, a heady 70s, jazz guy that was teaching middle school and grumpy and, he fired up C-Jam Blues and I was ready, dude. I had my pick and I was looking at where it was going to go, and I was right here and I was like this. And I was like, that's how you frickin' do it, and he was like, whoa. And he was like, wait a minute. He was like, that's not right. Read what's on the page here. And I said, I thought that someone had told him. I didn't know how to read music at the time, So I was like, I don't know how to read. And he was like, you don't know how to read? And then the class was like, and they were pointing and jeering and and he goes like, and what's that sound you're using? Are you using a pick? And they're like, hey guys, look, he's using a pick. I mean, it was just absolutely horrific. And I remember packing up, dude, and I thought, I just was like, what am I doing wrong? I went to a private teacher. He was like, oh, blues. And this is the blues walk. He showed me. He didn't know or didn't tell me that there's a difference between a blues pattern and a jazz pattern. Right.
Yeah.
And he was weird and was like, you play with a pick and that's how it's done. And so I was just doing what I was told. And then, dude, I got in the car and I remember my mom being like, how was it? She's all excited. I'm like, it was horrible. Like they laughed at me. Like I'm never going back. And she was like, do you want to go to Dairy Queen and get some ice cream? It's probably why I'm still comforted by food. I mean, dude, all these issues. And it's interesting. Like I did go back, but that was my first experience.
Yeah.
And I think ever since, I have had a chip on my shoulder and been reluctant to fall in love with this art form because because the guys were dicks, man. The guys that, right? The guys that I started out.
You reminded me of Big Lebowski there. The dick.
It's true. I mean, they were like, it was not supportive. Like that band leader chose in that moment to make a mockery, to make like a classroom example out of me.
Yeah,
and then encouraged all the kids to haze, right?
Yeah.
And look, I mean, that was in the 80s, early 90s. That was early 90s and things were different then. But I wish, man, that I had someone in my life in that early phase that would have said, hey, awesome, you're doing a thing, that's cool. Hey, try this. Like, let's just play, let's play C with your fingers. And then, to get up to that F, let's just walk through a scale. Let's play, right? Like let's do something else.
Because it's cool.
Because it's I
cool.
Wouldn't have then felt stupid. If someone would have just said, hey, there's another way, as opposed to you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
And that's, I think that's the crux of it.
We were joking yesterday, right?
I am the reluctant jazz guy.
There's probably a lot of guys listening to this right now that think, oh, Ian, jazz, nah. But the reality is that you've done it. Exactly what we're talking about. When I was saying, all of those greats that I mentioned earlier, they've all studied jazz. And same, like with you as well, same, right? Because that's the pathway that everybody goes down.
Yeah. And for me, it didn't happen until I was teaching. I was teaching actually a college course, and I needed to get my stuff together in terms of really understanding how to walk, doing it, going through heads. So in my 20s, I devoured like the Omni book by Parker. I really studied hard. But it's funny because even when you say that now, I'm like, I feel like this need to be like, yeah, man, look, I can do a 2-5-1. Like, see, like I feel this weird thing in me of like, oh yeah, people don't think I can. Well, I can, because it's like music as sport.
Yeah,
and it's so strange.
It might be because of that early memory as well. You know, like that early experience of feeling so, degraded in front of sort of like all of the kids and everybody's laughing.
God.
In my mind, it was like the Hollywood version of it, where they were pointing and throwing stuff at you like a rain.
I swear they were. I mean, there were like points.
Oh my God.
Like,
It's such a shame because it is cool. Like, it's not even cool. It's kind
so
of like
cool.
It's essential. It's essential, because when I'm playing a bass line, whatever that bass line is, all of that, all of the way that I'm visualizing the fretboard there, the way that I'm thinking root, flat 7, up to the major third, down to the flat 7, hitting that low, chromatic up to the
low
5,
third,
chromatic, blues scale, something like that, down to the 5, and then to the 1, and then why not flat 6,
and then
right?
Flat 6, and a Jocko harmonic too.
Yeah, exactly. Like everything I play is like through that lens that I developed by doing this.
Oh, yes.
Understanding how to, outline chords. This is how I learned how to outline chords. I learned how to outline chords by learning walking bass lines, which it's like the gateway into, that world of jazz. But the way that I like to, sell it to, and I mean like, literally sell it to people, like I think that like some people need persuaded to see the upside in this.
I know. I know.
Because to my earlier point, the greatest musicians have done this, and success leaves clues. It probably means that you might want to check it out as well.
Right.
And all of the way that I, use those walking bass lines is how I play bass now. Everything's through that lens. I can outline the chords on my bass because I learned how to do it like through walking bass lines, because with walking bass lines, it's just straight quarter notes. There's no hiding.
Yes.
It's just straight note.
Right.
Can you do it? Can you not? The end, right? Can you?
It's so true. Yes, getting through a form
exactly
with outlining the chords. Yeah.
And then you take that and use it within whatever style of music you want to play.
Yes, because that's the thing that I think people still don't quite understand. I get asked a lot, I'm sure you do too, how do you write a bass line? Like if you're jamming, or like how do you come up with cool bass lines? Yeah. And I think a big part of it is knowing something about the chords that you're playing, right?
Yeah.
Because, if you think about walking bass, like which Scott, you're just doing right there, and then you hear this bass line. Oh, what is it? Right?
Oh, yeah. Dookie.
That's a walking bass line.
Exactly that, yeah. Outlining the chords.
And like outlining the chords. Yes. And even something even just more simple, like, if you're thinking about G, what is it? A G major or a G minor? Well, if it's G minor, you've got a few things to do, right? Or a G minor 7, getting those things, then you get all that. And that's not jazz necessarily. That sounds like a funk lick, right? But I wouldn't know how to do that if I wasn't sort of thinking, oh, let's do something with like a G minor 7 chord.
Yeah.
Starting on the flat 7, using that, bending up slightly on that flat 3 to make it sort of ambiguous. Right, that flat 3 bend up to the major third down. That's jazz theory.
Yeah.
I mean, truly. And so, you just have to have it made accessible.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You have to have it made accessible and fun and cool and not a sport.
Yeah.
There's probably some people that respond to the like boot camp vibe. But I think it's a miracle that you or I made it to the other side.
I think it's,
for me anyway.
I don't think there's anything, I don't know, like it's a great story to tell. that's about it.
Yeah.
Like I'm not sure I gained anything from it. I don't think it made me want to practice. Maybe I'm not sure, but hey, I want to save other people from going, and hopefully, listening to this podcast, people will be like, okay, I need to get this together, see the benefits from it. But also, like, I just didn't even know that I needed to do it. I think that was one of the key things. I just want to say this into the universe. It is incredibly, it will, completely change who you are as a musician and bass player if you spend time learning this stuff. And that's why, we've spent a lot of time teaching things like this. In fact, we've got a program open right now for that we've put together to do this. So if you are interested in like learning jazz and taking it seriously, and again, even if you don't want to be a so-called jazz musician, that's cool. Yeah. But don't miss out on the opportunity to, take your bass playing to a place that you probably never imagined even existed, like I didn't. And hey, you don't need to check our stuff out. You can go, do it on the YouTubes if you want to. If that's the pathway you want to take. I'm definitely not doing the hard selling you here. But what I am saying is, if you do want to really up level your bass playing, using jazz and learning jazz as a tool to up-level your skills as a musician and bass player is second to none in so many ways. And you've probably heard me talking about this before, so I won't labor the point, but it's just so incredible. And we put this absolutely incredible program together, which is really more like a college class than an online course. If you've been following SBL for any length of time, you'll have seen us, we've got the SBL membership. We've got the accelerator programs that we've run, like the fretboard accelerator and the technique accelerator, and we've even run the jazz accelerator before, which is a standalone program. But because I'm so passionate about, or should I say, we're so passionate about jazz in general and really getting out there to the masses, but also wanting people to really succeed, what we wanted to do is put together a program that gives people like the full support that you need when studying something. So it's not sort of like an on your own experience when you're sat at home and you've got like a video and you're just watching this video and then you're going to practice on your own. It's much more like a full college class. So it's 6 months long. I think it's actually a little bit over 6 months long. 6 months long. There's a full step-by-step curriculum that is video-based. So it's myself teaching the actual curriculum. But then we've also got Todd Johnson in, who's just like an outlandishly talented jazz instructor. He is the best. He's the best. I love Todd Johnson. Me too. Yeah, when we were putting this program together, we were talking about it on the SBL team, and everybody was like, well, but we need sort of like Scott's teaching the curriculum, but we need like a live coach as well. I'm doing stuff live as well, but Todd's going to do, I think he's bi-weekly, he's going live. And we were like, who's it going to be? And everybody was like, let's get Todd Johnson.
Yes,
so Todd Johnson's doing all of the live stuff as well. And then we've also got some SBL coaches as well. We've put together an SBL coaching team that when you sign up for the course, you are going to be paired with an SBL coach, and you're going to asynchronously be coached by them one-on-one. So you can, send them videos, they can watch you playing, they can, give you feedback directly back. Like it's a full on, online college program, much less of a sort of like do it yourself, And the reason again why we wanted to do that is because right all the way back to what we were saying at the top of this conversation, it's hard. People, it's hard. There's walking bass, there's soloing and improvisation, there's chord theory, there's reading lead sheets, there's playing melodies, there's all of these different parts to it, and it's a lot. But it's a lot that really, if you take the bull by the horns, there's so much fruit to be got from it. So if you do want to check it out, all you need to do is go to sbljazzlab.com. and you'll find it there, sbljazzlab.com. Check it out. It's there's a hard number in terms of seats available. There's only a few seats available. I think as we're recording this, there was 79 seats available. Probably less when you listen to this. The reason we need to do that is because There's coaches involved. There's humans involved.
Exactly.
So if anybody's
capacity.
Yeah, exactly. If anybody's wondering why put a cap on how many people you're letting in the program, it's because we haven't got 100 coaches behind the scenes
Right,
waiting
of course.
for everybody. We've got a small group of SBL coaches that we put together specifically for this program. So again, check it out, sbljazzlab.com.
And I mean, the thing too about the coach selection and also you and Todd, I mean, I'm going to just talk about this from an outside perspective because I am not one of the coaches, but I think it's so important to let people know that if you're going, I'm on the fence, but I'm embarrassed at how much I don't know. If that's you, if you're like, I think I want to get into jazz. I get it. I want to be funkier. I want to have more facility. I want to be more like Jamerson or Dart, or right. But you're like, but I'm embarrassed at how much I don't know. I even went through jazz band, and I don't know. It's okay. I can assure from experience, I have hung with Scott Devine a lot. And you are one of the most encouraging teachers. You do not let anybody's skill or lack thereof or knowledge impact you. You don't have emotion about it. You're just there to help. Like you're not like, surprising to me that you don't know your Lydian dominant modes. Like you don't do that. Yeah. And Todd is the same. Todd is so encouraging. Yeah. And so I've sat in some of his like beginner jazz mentors stuff and live class, and he's so accommodating. The goal of Scott and Todd and the coaches is to help you succeed. There is zero goal of sports competition, who's going to do it the best. Oh, you don't know it. There's no sneering, there's no hazing. So if you're like, wow, it sounds cool, but it's daunting. Do not be daunted. If you show up and do it, you'll just get better. Yeah. You'll get better, and you'll be encouraged along the way by Scott, Todd, the coaches, right? So you don't need to worry like, I'm afraid I don't know enough, and so I'm not going to do it. Please just do it. If you feel pulled to do it, you should do it.
100%, man. And also as well, just to put it out there, is the guarantee. Have you seen the guarantee on it? I read the guarantee. I haven't talked to anybody about it, but it's a whopper. It's a whopper. Check this out. Even as I was reading it, as I was like recording the video to tell people about the program, I got to that bit and I was like, wait, what? This wasn't my idea. And it wasn't my idea. Check it out. It's 60 days money back guarantee. Wow. So you can do the program for 2 entire months. And if it doesn't rock your world, you can be like, give us the money back. No questions asked. That is bonkers. I don't know whose idea that was. Maybe that was Ben's idea. You could just
2 month it, learn all you can about jazz and bounce.
Yeah, it's like crazy because normally when you involve coaches like that isn't it's not normal to see offers like that on the internet. The reason being is that people can take advantage of it, right? People can be like, I'm going to get 2 months of education where I'm going to get a tutor one-on-one, do all of that. And then I'm just going to bounce after 2 months and get my money back. That is the risk that we're taking with this.
Right. Wow. Yeah.
We're so bullish on the program that we're willing to take that risk, that it will give you huge results in terms of your bass playing, and it's going to rock your world. So it's crazy. Even I thought it was crazy when I was reading it.
Man, I mean, I wish I'd had it. We talk about this stuff with SBL all the time, that essentially we're involved in making the things that we wish existed now, but also the things that we wish existed when we were coming up. Yeah, right? Yeah. Like, can you imagine, dude, going through a program like this online when you were coming up? Like,
it would
be incredible.
It would have been my dream.
Me too.
Yeah. This is my sort of like internal joke to myself, is that all of this stuff that we create is actually just for me. Literally, I think it's just for me, but it's just too late because I'm the actual one teaching the stuff, right? Or you're the one teaching the stuff as well,
right?
But it is just for me because I went through that pain. I went through that pain as a learner, not knowing and feeling stupid because I just didn't know. I just didn't know. Do you know how long I'd heard about the melodic minor scale. Oh, and by the way, I'm a freaking badass with the melodic minor scale. Let me tell you guys. And I think the reason is, here's the reason, right? Is because I'd heard about the melodic minor scale. Let me just do the math.
Yeah.
I'd heard about the melodic minor scale and could play it and not use it for about 8 years before I actually got it. I was like, oh, that's how it's used. And you know why? Because I just didn't have anybody tell me.
Right.
I just didn't have anybody saying, this is what you do. I actually had great players put me off using it, weirdly. No, you don't want to use
really?
that. Yeah. But I would just like...
Because they probably didn't know.
Yeah, exactly that.
Maybe they didn't know how to use it, actually.
Oh, yeah. I've had so much crap education, dude, in the past. Do you know, like, polychords? Do you know, like, C over a G or sort of like, you know, hey, spicy, and E over an E flat. Woo! All of that stuff, right? All of that stuff. I can remember asking one of, like, this teacher about it. and he just said, oh, they're basically all dominant chords. That's what he told me. That's what he told me.
That's not true.
Yeah. By the way, for listeners, that is not true. These are not dominant chords. Yeah. He just like, because a lot, you know, there are people out there teaching that don't know as well. Anyway, that's a conversation for a different time.
And I will just say this, real quick, if you see those chords, what'd you call a polychord?
Yeah, like slash chords, yeah.
Slash chord, yeah. Just for starters, just play the bottom note. They're not dominant. But just if it says C over G, just play that G, and you'd be fine.
Yeah, don't worry about
it. Don't worry about it just yet. And then, if you play that G, you'd be all right.
Yeah.
But C chord with a G in the bass.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, that stuff is tricky, man. That stuff is absolutely tricky, and so many educators are actually. They're embarrassed that they don't know stuff, and so then they just spread misinformation.
Exactly that, yeah. So it's
wild.
And again, just to sort of like put it out there into the universe, there's nothing wrong with not knowing. There's nothing wrong with not knowing. If I could have a word in my ear and like rewind time, and I would just say to myself, hey, you know, don't be ashamed of the stuff that you don't know. You know, there's no harm or foul about it, and nobody's really going to judge you, actually, for the most part.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot of it's self-judgment, right? It's fear about what other people are going to think. And, you know, I'm a big believer that, you know what other people are thinking about you? Pretty much nothing. They're too worried about themselves.
Yes.
Everybody's thinking about themselves, you know.
Dude, it's kind of like a narcissistic thought to think of like, oh, they're gonna judge me. Oh, they're gonna hate what I'm wearing. Oh, they're gonna hate what I don't know. That's making the world about you.
Yeah.
What if the truth is no one gives a shit?
Yeah, I think that's basically on the headline is like generally people just don't give a shit.
Yeah.
You know. Anyway, all that to say, guys, if you do want to check out that program, I'd absolutely love for you to take a look. Again, it's much more like a college course where you're going to be like, you know, communicating one-on-one with somebody. With Todd's also involved. I'm teaching the curriculum. Side note, that curriculum is freaking badass. I'm just going to say it. It's amazing. There's a whole reason why it tells you about on the page you'll go to. Just go to sbljazzlab.com. You can check out the full curriculum there. Also, I know it sounds crazy. You can do the first 2 months on us if you want to, and then bail.
Wild.
I'd rather you don't, but you can if you want to. I know that's crazy.
Right. It's an option.
It's an option. There's options, dude. There was something else. I can't remember what it was. Anyway, go check it out. SBLJazzLab.com. And hopefully I'll see you on the inside. And if I do, give me a wave and tell me that you listen to the podcast and this is maybe the thing that made you want to jump in and learn some jazz, because it's freaking awesome.
Absolutely.
Have we got anything else we want to touch on before the end of the podcast? Do you know what I was mentioning the other day, dude? I was mentioning how we're missing the pod.
Yes.
I just wanted to touch on it. I had a little kind of I was alone recording a podcast earlier today, and I was sort of like lamenting. I was like, Ian and I have been talking about, we're missing the pod. We miss our long, rambling conversations, kind of like this, right? But I miss them. And I just wanted to put it on the universe. And I also said to people, we don't know what we're going to do about it yet, but we're just you know, aligned on we're missing it. Yeah.
Yep. The thing I'll add just at the end is when you show up to SBL Jazz Lab, leave your pick. Just put your pick down right here. Take your hands, play with your fingers. Maybe that's a good way to start. I wish someone had told me that.
Yeah. Although Steve Swallow, dude. Steve.
I know, dude. And you, hey, also real quick, everybody after this, go find the first video on the SBL channel, the very first upload. It is Scott Devine playing My Funny Valentine with a pick on his Overwater signature 5-string bass with a high C. And I have to say, it's freaking glorious.
You want more pick playing, don't
beautiful.
You? Yeah, I can remember you
dude,
saying
I
you need more
love
pick.
it.
Yeah.
I love it. You sound so good on that. And yeah, Steve Swallow. Maybe just avoid the old like.
That's it. Hey, do you know I was playing a pick on that? I'm sure I've told you I was playing a pick on that video. Because I was repairing my washing machine the day before, and basically pretty much chopped the tip of my index finger off.
Yes. That's right. That's why you were doing it.
Yeah. I just had this big flappy bit of skin, and I was like,
oh God, gross.
Shit. Yeah. I was like, what? I was like, this is not the optimal time to do that. But I'd like, I was doing that bass clinic, so I just needed to go and do it anyway. So I turned up and did that bass clinic, and
it's rad.
Yeah.
It's a part of you that I feel like, cause you started on guitar. That's a little, I mean, people know that, but you played with a pick on guitar and then you brought it to the bass and you were really good at that. And I do want more of that.
I freaking love the pick dude.
Divine.
And you know what? I love Steve Swallow. If anybody doesn't know who Steve Swallow is, by the way, he's like this incredible jazz bass player who is just a legend. Amazing.
Yes.
Yeah, just incredible. Go check him out on YouTube. Steve Swallow. If you want to watch something beautiful, just write Steve Swallow bass solo. And he's just playing this beautiful bass solo, just like really lyrical. He's got a 5-string acoustic bass guitar. He's playing with a pick. Breaking the rules.
It's breaking the rules. It's pretty cool. Just not the way I did it at first in jazz band.
Anyway, dude, let's call it. Guys, thank you so much. If you do want to check out the program, go to sbljazzlab.com and maybe we'll see you on the inside. Take it easy. Bye.
Take care, everybody.